Two,
Yeah.
all set?
Okay.
A motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Terrific. Oh, what's next? Oh, here we go. Discussion of the school. How about that?
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Fine, how are you?
Come a long way since a year ago, right?
We have. We've got a lot to share with you. I think I should probably introduce, although Diane doesn't need an introduction to most of you, O'Neill. Diane O'Neill is our Director of Facilities. Dick Webb.
He's come a long way.
She's come the right way. I don't know.
Well, that,
From my
I'll leave that up to her.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said, I'll leave that up to Diane.
All right. Well, that's true.
That's true.
I'm doing just fine. Dick Webb is the architect on this project from SMRT. And so I really want to begin by looking at the enrollment. And I always want to frame any capital with where our enrollment is. And I think you've seen this before, but it changes each October a little bit. The quick way to look at this is in 20 years ago, 1993-94, we had 1,000 children. Today we have 1,557. These are October 1st counts, which is what the state uses as its official count.
Yeah.
I would then have you look at the total column back in 2007, 2008. You'll see that our enrollment went down actually in 6-7, 1308 down to 1233 over a 4-year span, if you're following me under that total column. What's interesting, some of you have heard this, that's when I was doing my homework and trying to make a decision about whether to come to Nantucket in 2010. And I can remember saying to my wife, well, I won't have to build a school because enrollment was going down for 4 years. And since that time, and I joke and say I don't accept the blame or the credit, we've gone from 1233 to 1557. We've gone up 325 students in 5 years. For a small school district, that is significant.
A lot of people think that's because of the downturn in the economy.
Yeah.
And now we got a boom in construction, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And will it happen again?
I think,
In other words, they're saying, come on.
will it slow down?
Well, it's gone up, but it's going to go back down as soon as we have another bust.
I think
So that's a good question, but not for today necessarily?
Well, for today, too.
it's one of our FAQs that we're developing because my answer to that will be we have gone to a very good demographer. Actually, Peter knows McCriven and Cropper, who have done some demographic studies in unusual places. And we've done a 20-year look at what it might be. Granted, that is a science/art, demographic studies, but I think they gave us a pretty good look. They predict that the numbers will go up until about 2020, at which point they'll level off, and we may see a decrease. I think it was 2020 to 2024. Now,
What did they say the limiting factor was? Why would it level off?
well, there are several limiting factors. The biggest one on Nantucket being housing. And in fact, we're seeing that this year. For the first month, this past month, from October to November, we saw a slight decrease in population. First month in like 4 years. And we've asked questions about why that might be. In several cases, not all, but in several cases it was couldn't find housing. So just, I could spend the whole hour on this, and I don't want to do that, but I wanted to frame our needs based on enrollment. We already have 4 modular classrooms on the elementary school site, housing for 5th grades. That school has 730 30 students in it, and it was a school constructed for 500, 550, depending on who you listen to. If the numbers go down, and quite frankly, I hope they do in 2020. I hope it does slow down to give us an opportunity to breathe and do things. But even if it should slow down, number one, we have too many children here now. So we're not going to lose, in my estimation, 300 students to a recession. So we already had that building need without looking at that.
Without any more expansion.
Yeah, without any more. So that's one piece. The other thing is, we know that, yes, we'll probably have a recession and have a dip in those numbers, but historically, what's happened after that? Nantucket has rebounded.
Yeah.
The numbers go back up. We are going to need this school. My fear, quite frankly, is that we're going to need another one inside of 20 years. And I don't say that to freak anybody out, but if the enrollment keeps at the rate that it has been, and this past year we added 75 students in 1 year, then we're probably going to be talking about another school inside of 20 years. And when we get to the charts, I'll show you what we're thinking the school district and town might want to consider at that time. Okay?
So Hispanics who are the ones who are having a lot of kids.
Yeah, well,
We don't have to say that?
Pardon me?
We don't have to
I'm
talk
a
like
Catholic, so I see them.
that. Me too, I'm just saying.
here's what I want to say to that, because we know we're fighting the perception by some people where we are building it for those kids.
Yeah.
I don't like that, but that's out there.
Nothing
No,
wrong with
my
having
point
this
was
guy.
that even if there's a downturn, those families are probably going to stay, and they're probably going to have children, and therefore
Well, can I-
it may offset. The white people are having less.
Let me tell you, I think what you're saying, assimilation. If you use that word, Mike, I've never fully met you.
Yeah,
Nicole,
no, I
how are
mean-
you? Diane, native. I'm a native. So we remember when we had little motorhomes behind Academy Hill. So don't worry, this is not new, having these little trailers. But what's going to end up happening when we have a downturn like that. It's like saying we need to get a smaller boat if there's less people. No, we need to build for a little bit into the future. But I think you're hitting it on the head, and I think that's what would be not a difficult sell at town meeting if it's said the right way, because we built a new school in '89. And we had a downturn, probably 2 downturns since now. We didn't make the school smaller. We used to fill the auditorium when we tried to ban beach driving and limit houses. That's the last time the building had a line out the door for town meeting. So, I mean, the building we need that size, regardless of how many kids there are. And there's going to be assimilated Hispanic families here that talk just like us, that speak English in about another 10 to 15 years. That's what's going to happen.
Well, that's what happened
So-
with our Irish population.
Right.
Right?
Yes,
My
that's
grandparents-
correct.
Quite a few years ago, it's no
I've
different.
heard a new term, at least new to me, New Americans,
New Americans.
rather than
Interesting.
Well, that's good.
I do want to
Yeah.
say 2 things to it. First of all, of the 325 students that have come in the last 5 years, about 130, 140 are identified as English language learners. So that's only half of that population. And I want to say to everybody, we are building this for everybody's children.
Yes.
We are not building a separate school for the Spanish-speaking or Bulgarian-speaking children. Everybody's child or grandchild is affected by having appropriate space for students to learn.
benefits all.
You're doing what the Boys Club's doing.
Right.
It's the same
And
thing.
when we were children, somebody was building schools for us.
Yeah, correct.
And then secondly, as Nat points out, that's Nantucket's history.
Yeah.
We were cosmopolitan in our heyday, in the whaling
Not the
days.
martinis, but yes, you're right.
Yeah. So,
You're right.
that sort of frames it for you, and now
All
if I
right.
can jump into the Capitol.
Yeah,
and
that's okay.
Please do.
Diane and I are going to tag team, and then Matt's going to, Dick's going to rescue us if and when we need to. The first item is a modular classroom. We expect that the elementary school, I'm sorry, yep,
Sorry.
sorry.
No worries.
We expect the elementary school may need more classroom space. And if their numbers continue to grow as the kindergartens and first grade, if you look back at the enrollment of 124 and 134, those numbers in kindergarten and first grade, if those are maintained, we will need more space at the elementary school.
Can I point out real quickly, the original request was for the middle school to have a modular. We've just taken middle school off because at this point, with enrollment out of control in all schools, we're trying to manipulate this that we don't know where this modular is going. So it may go at the elementary, we may need it at the middle. We just took middle off because we're going to need it anyway. It's just a matter of
Where?
grade level it goes at.
The costs of modulars to bring to the island and set up are crazy. That $300,000 is a 3-year rental. Right? And that sounds crazy, but that's what we spent for the one that we set up last January. Because you have the barge, you have the setup costs, and then the rental costs, might be $15,000 a year on top of the setup.
Is there any way we could buy it and use it for some other municipal use?
Well, yeah, we did end up buying the first one that we bought, that we rented on island. So one of the doubles at the elementary school site we now own, because at some point it became cheaper to buy from them than to continue to lease.
They're not coming back to pick it up.
You're right.
That's just how things work here. Stuff stays.
We know that. And actually, I had a discussion with the contractor that there's $49,000 built into this 231 for them coming back and picking it up.
Yeah.
And he said, if you made this company an offer for that 49, you can have it because they don't want it back. So, yes,
There you
probably
go.
yes.
Another reality.
So that actually sets me up when we get to the third project. But window replacement at $100,000. What we're talking about are the big banks of windows in the high school, middle school, that you see that they're generally on the second floor to provide light into your cafeteria spaces, into stairwells. And we've started that project this year. And I think we laid before you last year at Capitol that this would be a multi-phase project.
So the money that we got last year, I hired a contractor to go and replace all the mechanisms for the regular up and down windows, and we're replacing the entire large bank of windows behind the main stairwell. And that actually project, I got an email last night, will start on December 7th. It takes them about 3 days. They popped one window out, they put the next one in. We also went to a sort of a shaded glass.
That's
To
good.
cut down on HVAC costs.
Yeah.
And these windows, I've recently had a contractor go up and caulk because they were leaking so badly. And then the one over the pool pack is this one. They're all, none of them were properly flashed, and we're seeing the effects now. So that's why we want to move forward with this project.
And are we doing that with copper now, or is this going to be done
Yes,
like
and,
30-way paper, way Nantucket it's supposed to be? That's great.
As we go.
Great.
The third project is central office modular. This is one that we're rethinking, and I know Capitol hates it when the change comes from what originally came to you, but we think that if we get the building project going and the admin moves into existing elementary school space, I would rather rent space for 3 years than have another modular on island that costs, first of all, double what renting space would cost for several years, and then leaves us with another modular building that we have to
That was going to be
dispose of.
one of my questions, because it hits you right between the eyes when you think about it.
Yeah. What I've tried to point out with the building project is that we have a space problem not just in the elementary school, but K through 12. And so by my offices moving out of the high school, we give Dr. Bucky and the staff 2 more classrooms, needed classrooms. And it makes a lot more sense for us to move out than to have kids going
Yep.
back and
course.
forth,
Yep.
you know, from a modular to the regular. Frankly, that would disappoint me. I love connecting with the kids and getting to know them. But we'll be on the campus someplace. And
And this is temporary.
actually, our idea right now would be to move into where the community school is at First Way, which is, and move them into rental space.
Where? You know, you talk
Yeah.
about housing as a problem. Boy,
Yeah.
you know, business rentals are very
You know what?
hard to come by, too.
We're putting it out there, we're looking, we would need between 2,000 and 3,000 square feet. Libby and I had a discussion the other day, sort of put it on her radar. Maybe we don't find that, and that's why we have the modular, because you simply cannot find the space.
Yep. Saturation of hole.
Yeah. But I think renting, you guys will know better than I do, but if that's 3, 4, 5,000 a month for that much space, I don't know. But even that, at the high end, 5,000 is 60,000, 180, almost half of the 300,000 over 3 years.
It wouldn't be 5.
Yeah, that would seem high to me,
Yeah, that's high.
but
For 2,300,
if you can find it.
if you can find it. The key is finding it, but if you find it, it won't
Yeah.
be 5. It'll be more like 3.
I would hope so, and
Yeah.
that 5 is just inside of this room.
Maybe you can
That
let.
figure. So that is the one thing that we're not sure about, that we would love to decrease our request based on finding that space.
So that's it. It's one of those that falls in the category, we'll do it if we have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, type of thing, yeah.
So you want
What
the,
are you going to, in the long run, and I don't know, maybe if I'm jumping ahead, just tell me, what are you going to do with that, I don't know what we're calling it now, the little building between the schools, but it used to be the,
Teen Center?
yeah, it used to be the teen.
I'll show you when we get into that, because
Okay,
that's
fine.
what we could move into. Right now, community school is there.
Yeah.
They were in the middle school. We kicked them out of there because we needed the
Same
space for
problem.
students. So it was easier to move their program out. They have a presence downtown in 56 Center, and they have a presence at what used to be the teen center. They are running some teen programming out of there and in the schools as well. But, as I said, we could move there. It's kind of a good central location for the superintendent's office. And if we get this built, when we get this built, the community school will be in the elementary school, and I'll show that plan to you in a minute.
Just a question about the modulars. I don't understand very much about how they work, but once you have taken ownership of a modular, is it relatively easy to shuffle it around, like essentially stockpile space and say, I've got a modular, I took ownership of it, it sits there, if I want to move it from A to B, it's relatively inexpensive, or is that a big deal to move it and install it essentially?
I'll let Diane speak to that, because she's worked with this kind of...
It's not inexpensive. You have to have foundation, movers, fire alarm has to be hooked up, water, sewer, electric, and that's where the cost went from the $231,900. When we get into the fire alarm, when we get into some of the other
Code issues.
extra
And
costs,
security in school.
it's,
Safety.
yeah.
This is not going to meet my concept of a free variable that you can.
No, I mean,
We got a problem, we don't know where it'll be.
It's not going to cost $300,000, but it's probably, I don't know, probably 80.
Yeah.
It depends on where you put it.
It's not like a double wide.
The
track.
reason,
I think there's a
another
silver
reason is
lining
we
on it.
ran into where we put the new one. No one bothered to check the transformer. There was no room left in the transformer. We ended up having the electric company, National Grid come, put a new handhole in, so we could, there's no room. So they're all added costs that we,
It's not a strategy for hedging against, we don't know what we'll need 3 years from now.
No.
Okay.
I think though, Peter, to his question, Phil, is we're in the house moving business in Nantucket. Did you notice that? And in the old days, we used to kind of like, plant Christmas trees at the beach and build wooden swing sets that are illegal now. Maybe we can get some of the local movers someday to sort of, I don't want to say do it for free, but that would be a give it back to the community that we never would have anticipated 30 years ago when Metropolitan came over here for one house move with 1,000 trucks and then left. Now it's like every single day. And I think that we have the capability. I mean, there's so many people doing this, and they all care about the community. I think that I'd worry more about the cost of what Diane said, foundations, than I would the moving thing. You know what I mean?
You can't treat it as...
It's not on wheels, Peter, like it used to be. That's, I think, what your question is. I don't think it's
not
got
a modular
tires.
home.
Lower the tires and drive it away. That's not going
I
to
remember the
happen.
complaint from just the contractor for the crane was $10,000.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Just for the crane.
yeah.
So in
Yeah.
we're talking 2016, and that would be when the school would be.
My,
And then I guess the question is how, you have, what, a year and a half to figure out what to do with the community school?
I don't, if we pass the,
In other words, it's more important for you to be near the schools than it is for the community school to be near
yes,
the school.
That's right.
that was my point.
Yes.
And they could find rental space and for us to be,
Okay.
I mean, you don't want to look like you're like the White House over there
right.
and the school's
Well,
over
it's
here. Like,
difficult.
we're having that problem with the steamship right now. They're building the management out of Woods Hole. It's like, wait a minute. You know what I mean? You need to be like
I think
connected.
the proximity is important, and it's,
Yeah.
I think we're a small district, and one of the things that was attractive to me about coming to Nantucket was that it was small and that I could get to know the kids. And so for us to be outside or downtown or at the airport is not something that I personally want, and I don't think it's something Nantucket should want. You know, we need to stay
It's a
here.
disconnect.
Yeah, that's wrong.
I have one other question. This is kind of getting at the long-range, uncertainties that you face in trying to hedge your bets here. I remember you had mentioned a year or so ago that it was your judgment that it was likely to be a major impetus to fund pre-K at the national level. And I just wondered if you could kind of update us on that. What are the prospects that there may be?
When I show you the boards, I'll get into that,
All
Peter.
right, okay.
I'll come right back to that, because that's part of what we are planning for,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's certainly a big question.
Bacchus Lane, we already have some appropriation from ATM in 13. That it wasn't enough. It allowed us to move forward on design. This would allow us to complete that storage. We're talking about the space at the skate park, the back of that.
Yep.
I think there was an original plan to finish that, and it just was never completed. So you see what looks like concrete bunkers in the back that are open.
yeah.
The plan was for that to be enclosed, bathrooms over there, because that's an athletic complex. And so this would allow us to complete that. This is really important. For some people, the bathrooms are important. For us, the storage is important, because when you have enrollments hitting your schools, typically what you do is you take rooms that were planned for storage and you make them tutoring rooms. The psychologist, the speech therapist. And so you lose storage in a building, or if you're trying to keep down the square footage costs of a school, what do you cut first? It's usually storage.
Yeah.
And so I would say that in all of our schools, storage is at a premium, and this would significantly help us.
How many square foot is that going to be anyway?
It's about, the footprint is about 1,000 square feet. So with 2 floors, we really have about 2,000 square feet of storage, and then there is that lower bay that would be more for the larger, bulkier type athletic storage.
I'm thinking, a building on land is a very important thing. Is there an additional use that could be done if you did something there, as opposed to just storage and bathrooms for the athletic teams and the skate people?
We talked about that.
I'm sure you did. Okay, sorry.
No, that's a logical question. We said, okay, could the athletic director be there? Again, then you have a disconnect between the athletic director and the kids. If you're in our building and see daily the number of kids who check in with Chris Morey, I mean, hourly, it's really a nice connection, so I wouldn't want to move him out. And then we talked about moving facilities over there. And, Diane and I are checking in with each other hourly. So at this point, no, Phil, but could it become?
When you say disconnect, it's not disconnected from the elementary school, though, is it? Isn't it right close?
It is, because
No.
they can't get in there between classes and.
I mean,
Yeah. But I'm just saying,
It is-
if
it
if
could
you
be
get a whole
usable
great
space.
big master plan of the schools and buildings and everything, this is a vital, piece of land, because you own it, and
it's an interesting question because you've got the skate park in your front yard. And there are, depending on who you talk to about the skate park, there are some people who say expand it and some people who say drop a bomb on it.
It's like the windmill.
Depending on who you talk to. I think it's a wonderful thing. The best thing I've seen done in the community, though, and this is hindsight for you, is they put a skate park in Laconia, New Hampshire, next to the police station. Brilliant, in my opinion.
Was that purposeful? or-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then you have
Two different things
supervision,
going
and
on.
one of the
Yeah.
problems
You
at
got
the skate
automatic
park is
supervision.
Yeah,
supervision.
it's good.
But that's hindsight.
Sure.
well, the other thing is, I always thought skateboards were a fad. It seems to have lasted an awful
Yeah.
long time.
Ron Fair.
Yeah.
I think Libby's one of the ones who would say drop a bomb on it because her son, I think, broke his arm or something there.
All right, well, I'm sorry,
Mike, just a short follow-up. How much total is it going to cost? Like, when you add in the foundation and the building, what's your total out?
On the Bacchus Lane storage,
Yeah.
well, that foundation had already been done.
When they did the,
Right, so I don't know that I would know that figure, but we had 125 at ATM in 13 and 150, so our investment would be the 275.
275.
and then you figure a foundation cost you
And this is an uninsulated
shell.
shell.
This is the Dan Hogue
Concrete,
building of
Exactly.
today.
Right.
which is,
Can you legally do that, though? With all
Just
the
in
weight, crazy
storage.
rules we have today?
Well, I
Can't
think-
build anything like this.
I
now.
think the original design
Do more with that
was to allow that, so I think we
Okay.
could go back to something that had already been approved.
Okay, good.
It's for athletic equipment, it's for uniforms, it's for desks.
Furniture.
Yeah, it's for
Can I-
things that we don't have room for.
Can I just ask one thing, Phil? I know you want to get off of this. I've
ahead.
been here for 2 weeks. I'm not trying to catch up on 2 weeks. Don't think that. I know you are.
Go ahead, Linda.
Okay, and I'm not going to be at the next meeting, so I'm sorry. I have, this is like some of the questions that Peter's been asking. And this is not necessarily, Mike, you've been here how many years now?
5 now. Yeah, I
So
can't-
you've got a little ways to go, but you're doing really good. It's the first time I've ever heard you talk, and you're doing good. Let me tell you something. It matters.
Wow.
You can sense when somebody's getting Nantucket,
Thank you.
okay? Have we, I have this sort of mindset today with all these projects going on. It's sort of it. Like this, we're not doing this again stuff. Like the hospital thing,
Yeah.
the Boys and Girls Club, what are they going to have, another building someday? Where's it going to go, right? It's not going to happen. Fire station last time, see you later. But Are you looking at the dirt at the school area? Like, have you talked to Holgate's Laundry? Have you talked to Margot? Maybe. You never know. This Bacchus Lane thing, and do you understand the whole deed restriction issue over
Yeah.
there? That isn't going to go on forever. Something's going to change. The attitude about First Way 15 years ago when you were wherever, you wouldn't have thought that you could put 1 square foot of asphalt on that road. It's half done. Almost. It's going to happen. So things are going to get fixed, but it takes so long here to get the mindset shifted, okay? So my question is, you got to look at each piece of property privately owned that's like kind of like in the wrong place, and and say, look, one day we might have to. If a family wants to sell a piece of land, write the check.
When
and
we
get
get
it
to,
done.
this is great, because when we
I
get to
mean,
the,
you got to think like that. This is silly to be talking about moving buildings all over the place. What, are you going to have an underground tunnel
We
to get
asked,
there?
just to kind of jump ahead, I had some discussions with Andrew about the land bank land. He's put together an article to do a land swap.
Yeah, we're
for the
gonna do
land
that
next to the
stuff.
field. I really hope that goes through, but on what you're speaking
We're not
of,
going to bring up names, but we know who they are.
he asked me if we should do an article to give the school permission if a piece of property
Negotiate.
comes up for sale, can we
Yeah.
move forward with
Yes,
writing an article?
we should be doing that.
So that, I think you'll see at town meeting this year.
Good.
Oh,
End of story.
and when I show you the site plan,
That's
that's
the beauty of having you on the
start to
committee.
go in.
Got to do this
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, look what happened with the Great Harbor Yacht Club, Diane. We ended up, Michael Ramus went, I'm out of here. He goes out to Middle, wherever he lives now. And Bobby got his house, moved it over here, and see you later. I mean, ask Jack McElderry. He didn't own the Tuckanuck Inn for 2 years. You know what I mean? It's gone. I mean, sometimes you have to do these things.
We've looked at properties across the street.
Having the
It'll be
town
easier when we
prepared,
put that board
the
up.
key thing is the RFP potential, because the town can't write a check. It takes
No.
2 years to write a check.
Yeah.
And if
So
you had
that's
to go to
good.
town meeting to get permission to buy it, and then go to town meeting for the money, it would be too long. People aren't going to hold on to the property for
That's
long.
correct.
If we have the prior permission to go and write the RFP and make the offer, then we only have to go to town meeting to buy it.
That's great
If it
news.
gets
That's the
approved.
best news of everything so far.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, this is small money, to get the storage thing done.
Yes.
We really
If
need
you have to
the
tear it
storage.
down eventually.
Well, square
it's-
foot wise, it's a lot cheaper.
Any other
than school.
questions? Yeah, exactly.
All you have to do
Is it a
is
stick
square
built thing?
foot cost.
Is it?
At the
And we
school,
want
the
to,
square foot cost is this.
Any other questions about this particular
Like,
issue, so we can move to the next particular issue?
We'll go to the generator, and then I'll get to the master plan.
I think we're all anxious to hear
Yeah.
that, because it sounds like all these questions about longer range, you're going to be answering anyway.
I hope
so-
that
That's
we are.
fantastic. I mean, I'm pumped about this now. Good.
The generator is, at the elementary school is something that's important to do for several different reasons. It is not our emergency shelter, the high school is.
Yes.
But if we ever had a really terrible event here, it would give us a second site of an emergency shelter. From the school's perspective, the existing generator only provides emergency lighting. It does not cover one worry for me, which is the freezers. If power goes out for a long time, we can lose $25,000 worth of food products. It doesn't cover heat,
I was going to say.
and so we need to do this. This is a high priority for maintaining our buildings, and
Yeah.
And the generator will be removed from the interior of the building and
Stays.
be a self-contained unit outside in
Yeah.
that little courtyard.
Yep.
We've looked at, we hope it gets HDC
That was my
approved,
next
but it's
question.
really an important project for us.
That's
So
what's
that-
good. It's going to be diesel?
The cost of this includes an enclosure.
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, they come all set up, just like those crazy
Right.
fuel tanks. made
Yeah, I
out of cement.
understand. Well, you can buy them without it, too.
Yeah, I know.
Behind
But you just don't have enough KW, that's your problem,
With the same
correct?
thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Got
There's a value to
Well,
this
Nantucket Bank,
generator.
the
you know.
generator was in the
Yeah,
basement. I don't
the
think
old
you
one?
really want it in the basement anymore.
No.
So
They
this
don't
one's
wear out.
outside, but it kind of, it's self-enclosed. Just take a look at
I mean, this could be a
35 generator.
municipal, you could use this generator in another municipal use, or it has a value. I can tell you that. It's just,
The old one?
back in the day, they didn't have all this stuff. They weren't thinking about these things then. I mean, we had power outages so much that you were thinking about just getting some power. Now it's more of like, if it was ever a long-term issue, security issues and all these other things make a generator system different than it was then. So,
Phil?
So we're on to the next item.
The big ticket?
the big ticket. Kevin got that.
Only in
Phil's
New
been
Jersey.
champing at the bit here.
Well, I think we can ask all our questions in the context of this overall plan, too.
So I think the thing to do is to answer a lot of the W questions. What, who, where, when,
okay.
and then, of course, the 1H, how much. And so that's what I want to try to do in the next 15 minutes for you, sort of a speed version. I think,
Mike,
I'm
is
sorry.
this final as far as you're concerned?
no,
Okay.
no.
That's,
That's the short answer, and I'll try to go over this. I think we've shown the why for the last 2 or 3 years with the numbers coming into the school. And I'll tell you, I've spoken to several groups, and I don't think there are many people in the community who are pressing the point why. I think people get that. It's really going to be more about the how much and
Is it sited right? Does it work nice?
Exactly,
Same with the
exactly.
hospital,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yep. So the we've been working for some time, and the first thing, well, we can show you the site plan. Just to orient you, here's Surfside Road, here's the high school, middle school, and here is the existing elementary school. We are talking about building a new grade 3 through 5 intermediate school in what is right now the parking lot of the elementary school. We've chosen that site out of, Peter, maybe eight sites that we explored. And we examined at first Bacchus Lane, 2 different possibilities on Bacchus Lane. We decided that now was not the time for that because of the deed restrictions. But I agree with Nat. Someday that may change,
Yeah.
and we'll take another look at that. We examined 2 possibilities here, in this part of the parking lot and this part of the parking lot. We looked at 2 sites in what is the valley in between the schools, up here by the garden and down closer to Surfside. Examined a lot of different possibilities. One of the concerns that we had putting it here was the traffic on First Way. And this is not a good exit. If you want to go left onto Surfside here, it's really not a good outlet. Now, it brings to question,
the circulation of fixing these roads.
well, and might this be a property someday, if it came open, that we would like to acquire? Absolutely. And that goes to your earlier point. So one of the issues when you determine a site is, especially on Nantucket, is traffic flow and parking. Those are 2 pieces. What people like, and I'm going to let Dick go into this a little bit too, is that we have a plan that will take some traffic off of Surfside Road. And we also want to keep in mind the rotary if it goes in, because that can affect where we might want our entrance. We might want to move our entrance existing entrance down further. Okay? So what we've talked about with Andrew Vorse and Mike Burns, and Peter McEachern's been on this as well. Let's talk about the future, and what are going to be the possibilities for traffic flow on the island. This isn't for the school to decide. It has to be the school and town of Nantucket working together. But we would be, we'd be found wanting if we said to people we haven't even had that discussion.
Can I interrupt you for a second? The school committee, I hate to say it, I'm just telling the truth, they stopped the other roundabout from happening.
Yep.
I mean, that's the fact.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
The school committee has
Sparks.
stopped that. That would already be
What?
built. The hospital, way before this new hospital thing came in, they've given up the house on the corner. They they want it done. And everybody knows we need it unless you have never been anywhere where there's a roundabout. And there's more and more and more, because in Maine now they work like a champ. But having said that, though, there's a whole traffic circulation issue for this whole, from Sparks through Surfside, First Way, Hooper, and Fairgrounds, when you really think about the whole picture. I think that you're on the right track. I think that you have to pretend that First Way is paved in your mind. It's going to happen. It's going to get fixed. There's going to be a sidewalk. I think you have to pretend that Bacchus Lane is cut through. And I think that you have to pretend that at least there's a turning lane at Bartlett. There's going to be at least, at minimum, a turning lane. If the roundabout doesn't happen, that land on the right is secured right now, the Poets Corner.
This property.
Just so you know that.
Yep.
It's
We know
secured.
that.
And there's going to be some improvement there.
So here's
Correct.
some of the things that we have talked about, okay? We have looked at, whether Bacchus would be completed, that piece, which might mean that people, instead of dropping off at the
Go
school
out another
and
way.
going back out, have another way to go
gotta
out. So
pay.
that's one piece that's being discussed. We have also talked about, will there someday be a connection from First Way to Sparks? Now, we have the Cow Pond Lane, I don't know,
Well, yeah.
but...
It's
but
gonna happen
Will
someday.
that happen someday? So we want... Now, what I'm afraid of, and I really want to say this, I don't want to derail support for a new school by people who don't want
Yeah.
this or this.
Yeah.
That
Be-
scares me.
You've been here longer than 5 years by saying that.
That
so you know.
scares me.
You're absolutely right. You're
So,
a native Nantucket?
I can't afford, I've got to have 2 yes votes for every no vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
that's right.
So I can't lose all of these people who live there who say, I'm not voting for that because that's going to do this.
That's gonna make
All right.
a speedway by my
So
house.
I've cautioned the site review committee
True, though.
on that issue.
Yeah.
But we also need to be talking about it so that
Yeah.
people say,
Well, the key to this
What's the point?
discussion is spreading out the vehicles.
Exactly.
Spread them out.
Exactly. We're trying to
Can't
spread
have one
them out.
beach in the summer.
And that, to your point, we're trying to look at how some of these potential future options might play into the immediate proposal and need. And so we're trying to, as best we can, set the table
Yes.
to work with
I like
that
that.
potentially in the future. But the immediate need is exactly try to develop options where people have different ways to get themselves out and to their destination point after a drop-off or before pickup, and not rely completely on Surfside. Absolutely.
I want to show you one other thing that we're talking about, and actually I was going to do where last, but, because I know where sends us into an hour-long discussion.
Can we talk about the ice rink a little bit and how that parking is going to integrate with the school?
Well,
Have you had any relations with
we
that?
have had an agreement with the ice rink. Our elementary parents use the ice rink parking in the morning to drop off and walk their children over. They use our parking lot when they have events.
Yeah.
And that agreement has been in place, Diane, for some time.
It was
It
the
was part of the planning.
Mid-Island Overlay
provisions
District.
of building the ice rink.
Had to be, because
You
their
had to
stuff
share
happens
parking.
after school's closed.
Right.
That makes sense.
So that's in existence.
Doesn't
Now,
matter.
the other thing that I like, but we need to see how it works, just for morning drop-off and afternoon pickup,
Pickup, yeah.
we are considering building an access road over here to First Way, so that somebody could drop their child off, go out this way, or not to First Way, excuse me, and drop their middle school child off, without ever having to come back onto Surfside.
Okay, yeah.
So
Right.
we're trying to develop as much internal circulation, again, to keep them off of Surfside. The on and the off, the movements on and off Surfside are complicating.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Traffic.
So it's a
Everything you're saying.
cross-campus drive that we're talking about.
But I want to be clear, it's a one-way, and it's only during drop-off and pickup. It is not for people to be missing all of this in
Cut
the
throughs.
summer
It's not a cut through.
by going
Yeah,
there.
no,
We
that's
would have
good.
it gated,
Yeah, well,
and we're only talking about morning and afternoon.
I like it.
So that's sort of a critical piece, and we think for many parents who do drop off an elementary and then a middle school child, they never have to go back through here.
Michael, what percentage of parents drop their kids off?
Probably 80.
Too many.
I knew that you were going to ask that question. I waited. I didn't want to ask it for you. I knew it was coming.
Well, it just, it boils my blood that we pay for, must for you.
Transportation.
We pay for school buses and then we're paying for roads so that they
Okay.
can.
There is
It's
a
the safety
culture-
issue with the smaller kids. The
There is a-
parents are connected to them in the morning.
There's a
what it
culture
is.
on the island that it's easier to drop my child off because of
So
we
close.
are so close.
Yeah.
I am always amazed that we have so many parents. That's the problem right here, right now. No
Younger
school
kid.
can be built for 70% of your parents dropping their children off.
Yeah.
And when this school has become 730 kids, think of the number of cars that are coming here and going back out on Surfside.
But they don't just drop off. They park and walk them in.
I was going
Yeah.
to say that the drop-off and the pickup functions for the parents are really twofold. There is a classic sort of drive-in to a turnaround, shake your hand,
Yeah.
or you open the doors, slow the car down, the kid, the son or daughter leaves, and the parent continues on his way. That's one of the drop-off movements. One of the, interestingly though, one of the more proportionally significant drop-off movements is parents arrive on school campus, physically park in a parking space.
Or in the
and-
bus lane.
Or in
Yep.
a bus lane, and walk their son or daughter to the front door. So we have two different
the car
types of
running.
drop-off movements, and the same thing happens in the afternoon, where parents will park and walk to the front entrance to greet their son or daughter and walk them back to the car. Or others will then just do the pickup and the turnaround.
As
So
long as it boils your blood enough to try to fix the problem.
You can't fix
we're
it.
trying to fix.
You can't fix it.
It drives me crazy
No.
because people complain about it, and I say, I'm sorry to say this, but you're the problem.
Yeah. But see, can I just tell you why they do it, though?
What's that?
You should tell them, go to Europe.
Yeah.
But can I just tell you something?
as a
When
kid,
you're off
My
island,
kids are.
okay,
I
you know
never
why
got
we
my
need
kids
AAA?
Did you
Because we
know
lock our keys in our
Never.
car off island.
Never.
People don't need, you can drop a kid, leave your car running, nobody's in the car, and walk your kid into the school and not have to worry about someone stealing your car. It's Nantucket stuff that's very weird, makes something like this, where somebody from off island that's coming here as a consultant would be like clueless as to why the numbers are so high. Forget about cars and gasoline, I don't want to hear anything about that. It's just because people feel connected. It's very strange.
Some of it, I
It's
think,
oddball. Like if you had to drive 20 miles or 15 miles, everybody'd be taking the bus. The parents wouldn't be able to afford the time to drive to school.
One of the things
That's
that we
it.
are going to do, and then I want to move on,
Yeah.
for the new school, we are going to create the expectation that you drop your children off, grades 3 through 5. You drop them off. You don't walk your 3rd through
Yeah.
5th grader in,
Yeah.
right? That's not what we do. I don't think we can change that culture for kindergarten and pre-kindergarten because
It's like daycare.
we are very concerned about, walking our child in by the hand.
Yes.
But the new school will have, here's the expectation, your
Yeah.
child is old enough to walk into the school.
As long, I guess I see it in a way, and I agree with you, Michael, where we have a culture, and we're dealing with some things to address that culture, so we work within that. But also, cultures change over time, and let's keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
slowly change sometimes.
I want to point out that there's also in this project an addition to the middle school. This is the wood shop right now,
Yeah.
as you drive back.
Yep.
We would love to connect to this, and I'll show it to you in a minute, because right now, if you're at this part of the school to go to lunch, you go all the way this way.
Yep.
That may not sound like a big deal to you, but if you're in the operations of a school and traffic flow and all of that,
Yeah.
we would love to connect this.
Yeah.
I don't think we can because it will trip codes. That means we have to come up to code on all of this.
What's wrong with
Pardon?
I'm sorry, what's wrong with coming
Well,
up
it
to
was built
code?
in 55, so.
Say that again?
It costs money, it's just a large amount of money.
And,
You get the
And,
report.
and you know what, maybe someday we do, but right now, I'm trying to get
Okay.
this project into something that the community can accept is
Phil's a banker, don't mind us.
appropriate.
well, I'm just thinking, if it's not up to code,
Well, no.
what kind of code? are you
Well,
talking
let me show you when we
Anyway, it's probably not-
show you the site plan.
We're spending plenty of money
I just
without
have
it,
a
so.
curiosity question. How long before you have to enlarge the middle school and high school?
And that's the 20.
Good question. So, if you're looking at this for the next 15 years, this probably works. We are trying to get some of this land bank land, to expand our fields, because we know that the next building we have to build is probably right here.
That's what I was going to ask you before. Why are we not, well, okay, I should say it this way. Whatever you are planning, that baseball field is free. I mean, it's like, we haven't spent a dime on that except fertilizer and a lawnmower. So
Here's-
that's good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if we have a plan for the baseball field to go somewhere else, or the soccer, whatever, multi-use, then we're good.
Yeah, it's probably going to come
Good.
over here.
You'll see
Good.
the land bank article.
Excellent.
Now,
This is great. That's like, kind of like, I don't
What
want
I-
to say free dirt, but that's like not, think of it as just dirt. It's
what I
just,
get into
you know,
It's part of
That's
the
good.
big plan.
That's
Exactly.
good stuff.
Yeah, that's good.
What I would say in response to your question is that someday when, and I hope that it's not going to be for 20 years, but someday the numbers at the high school, middle school are going to be too large, and this is what I would expect might happen. This whole plant will become high school.
Yeah.
And you will build a 6, 7, 8 middle school somewhere in here.
Yeah.
That's what I would expect would happen.
That's a great idea.
It is
Mike.
cheaper to build a middle school than a high school. Cheaper dollars. Think about all the labs and gyms and
More
auditorium and
commercial
all
kitchens.
of that.
Easy.
So I think you build a 6, 7, 8 here, make this your high school, then you're probably going to want to be looking, as Nat said earlier, at different properties
Yeah.
in the next 20 years so that you either have room to build or fields, because you're going to be taking fields away here. Have I
Parking.
talked to Margot? Yes. Would I love to see the present hospital site for fields and a park? That's me.
It might come to that.
That's me.
There could
I
be
don't know,
something.
but that's not my, I don't have a dog in
Yeah.
that fight.
No, it's complicated.
And I don't want to start going out there in the community saying what the hospital should do, because
They don't know
You
what
got
they're
enough
doing. let me
problems.
tell
I
you.
got enough problems, and you're right. You're right.
You don't need to add any more.
But if I
But
were
it's-
community visioning,
Yes.
for 20
Yeah.
years.
Oh, that's for me.
You know, that's why I'm thinking here, that's why I'm thinking fields, or whatever else we can acquire.
You're doing a great job. I love it.
Do you want to touch a little bit on that new synthetic field?
Do
That
they
was
get,
part of the.
they get reconfigured, don't they, as part of it?
This,
I was gonna ask.
They do, don't
this
they?
plan incorporates some of the athletic planning for field
football field
development.
moved.
Correct.
We-
The
we
football
moved
field
them.
currently is
We
located.
can't, though. Come
Are we
on.
doing that?
Time out.
No.
Time out. I'm gonna
That could turn
slow
into a
you down.
problem.
We have
okay.
shown the vision for the future, but this is not part of this
Okay.
project.
Yeah, okay.
Thank
That's what
you.
I was gonna ask. Okay.
That
5
could end
years
up
ago-
being the whole first way thing, just so you know.
5 years ago, we were moving forward on this.
Yes.
When enrollment took off, I said to the school committee, and to Diane, and to Chris Maury, time out, I can't go forward with a $3 million project for fields when I don't have room for students. We will have the plan for this, but right now, our money has to go into classroom space.
So that field for the land bank thing is also
I'll email you.
not true, I mean, not part of it, but the visionary picture, correct?
Correct.
As part of that? Now, that's the regular baseball field, right? The regular high school fall field?
Baseball is here now.
No, I know that. I'm saying, is that
We're
what that
going to-
is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Got you.
And hopefully, if we get that land bank land, we'll move the baseball field down and we'll maintain those two soccer fields as soccer fields.
I like this idea. This is really good.
Having sold a lot of major investments and funds, et cetera, why put something on the board that you're trying to sell one thing
Yeah.
that leads to questions about something that's not even in the plan?
You know what?
I mean, for the immediate, in other words, I'd take that off, because
we talked about
everybody's
that,
going to
having
ask
another
about
board.
that and
Actually,
say,
have two, don't we?
wait a minute, how many millions is that? And I don't like that. I don't like, the fields, the sun and the moon and the stars and the wind and
The windmill.
the windmill.
I think, yeah.
But
He's right about
if it doesn't matter to what you're trying to sell, why prompt a negative?
I think
Just a
my
suggestion.
suggestion, in having done very many of the same things, is that might be a backup board in case the questions require it. But I'd have a more simpler, as a main presentation, keeping that out of there, because that'll muddy the water. But I wouldn't get rid of that, because
Somebody will ask the question.
somebody may ask it, and you don't want people to think you haven't thought about it.
Correct.
Exactly what John is saying. But here's how I think, Mike, 5 years, let's plug in your 10-year hat for a minute.
Yeah.
This is where I think the town is personally. They want to know that there's somebody like figuring things out, thinking. Nobody knows you guys. Like, in other words, you're not from here and all that kind of thing. I believe my personal feeling about how departments should run, like with the steamship, when you have trusting people, you kind of let them run the place. You're overseeing things like we are here, FinCom, town meeting, but you can tell when somebody knows what they're talking about. I do agree with Phil, but I think that there needs to be like this little other slide behind, because people actually want to think that you're thinking beyond 20 years, or even beyond 10. This whole 5 to 10 year stuff is foolish when it comes to spending millions like this. This is perfect, but you do have to kind of put it, the field thing, switch, and that field in the middle being just considered dirt is an excellent way of thinking, and the public will buy that as long as it's presented right. As long as you're not like acting like we got plenty of money, boom, levy the taxes, see you later, bye, have a good day. That mindset, as long as you don't present that type of mindset, these guys love it when I say that, because they think the taxes should go up anyway. But the public will buy this if we're getting the bang for our buck. If you're just thinking 5 years, we got to do it again, that's when people get turned off. I can sense that you're thinking for today and way out. That's awesome. This is good.
But you might say, even when you bring it out, is that, well, this is not firm. This is what kind of we might do, but this is not what we're, but that could be what could happen.
You put in
Permanent solution mindset.
block letters, you put in block letters,
Future.
future possibilities.
Peter's got a question?
No,
Really, the
That's good.
message that I carry away from this is to say, you've got a plan to deal with the fact that you are overcrowded, you're going to get rid of that problem, you're looking toward the future. The honest answer is, the future has a lot of uncertainties. You don't really know what the world's going to be like 20, 25 years from now. But what you've told me is that you have created a plan that is resilient and adaptive. It's resilient in the sense that you can go a lot of different ways depending on how the future unfolds. And it's adaptive in the sense that when you talk about the traffic, you say, we don't know how that's going to unfold. We know it's going to change. And we have a lot of different ways of adapting to how the traffic will go. We could put a road through here. We could put an entrance through here. So however the future unfolds, we can adapt to it. And we have a long-term, strategy for dealing with a future where there's no further growth or where growth continues beyond what we had anticipated. We can deal with that. And this is the concept these are the concepts that we have. And that's where you're, the two versions of this come in. You can say, this is what we're trying to buy now, and this is how we are going to adapt to those unknowns in the future. But we're not asking for money for that, and we don't know if it will ever materialize.
But you're trying not to preclude
Yeah.
things from
We're trying to
happening in the
plan.
future.
Yeah, I don't know.
What's this chart about?
People will understand it.
Well, this is the what. We jump to
Top
where.
down to.
This is the 3 through 5 intermediate school that we would build.
Okay.
This is not the final plan, but this is to give you an idea of what might be included in that 3 through 5 elementary school. On the ground floor, it'd be a 2-story building, would be your third grade. Third grade, you have your library, media, art, music, and a gym. This configuration will probably change. We're already talking about wanting the cafeteria closer to the front entrance. And so we're working with Dick and his group to take a look at that. On the second floor would be the 4th and 5th grade. They're a little bit older. They can more easily go upstairs, downstairs. And again, this configuration will change somewhat too. But just to give you an idea, the floor, the ground floor would be about a 50,000 square foot building. The entire building would be about a 70,000 square feet. We are trying to get it down to 70,000 from 75.
Why?
Right.
Just ground
Yeah.
cover issues, or?
You know what? Cost.
Okay.
We're trying to be as sensitive to cost and I guess fiscally responsible. I know that there are many people on the committee who are saying, Mike, you're too worried about it. And I'm thinking, we've got to present something to the community that they say, you know what, this makes sense fiscally. It's not all kinds of buildings get the Taj Mahal
It's not the
label.
police, it's not the police station.
Well, yeah.
What about a restroom on the second floor?
But we have to show something that works, that allows for future growth without giving too much space. And that's the delicate piece, that's the unknown. And so we have built, we're looking at a building that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 classrooms for each grade and a cluster, but not an open cluster, because in the elementary school now, if you've been in it, there are open clusters inside of each grade pod, but that open cluster can't be turned into classroom space if you needed it to. So we're looking at containing that space a little bit. Again, this will look different because we are fine-tuning this weekly.
There's a lot that goes into it.
A lot that goes into it.
On the prior thing, it showed an L shape, didn't it? That doesn't look L-shaped.
Yeah, it isn't necessarily, but
And I think what we're taking these components and reworking them
In the
into
L.
more of an L shape because it fits the site better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. That's kind of what I was thinking.
This was a little more I don't want to say arbitrary, but this was.
That's a lot of
This
boxes.
is conceptual.
This is
Just
conceptual.
the spaces.
Put the
What
boxes in
spaces
different
were we
configurations.
gonna
And now we're
But I
trying
like that a
to
lot
take
better
those
than-
spaces and configure it to the site.
You do 2 plans, essentially.
Yeah.
Well, it's blocks of space,
Yeah,
because
it's
it's
just,
more of a space.
just a bunch of
needs
rectangles,
kind of thing.
basically.
Those are the Legos, that's the footprint.
Yeah. And we're continuing to define
Well, then-
and refine
Then again,
this.
don't show that if you're gonna.
No.
But this is preliminary. We haven't gone public with all
Okay,
this
all right,
stuff.
I'm sorry.
We're still,
I'm still
Yeah.
at the final presentation, sorry.
My question on size, and I'm sure you know this right off the top of your head, but if you take these statistics and you sort of use the material you've been given by that expert, saying that the next few years. Now, I've always looked at building in terms of saying anything more than a 5-year plan I don't know what's going to happen.
swag.
Yeah, so we built plants all over the world for 5 years, but they were expandable, easily expandable. So people say, well, it costs you more to do that. Well, it does if you end up expanding them. If you don't end up expanding them, because you find, then you've saved a lot of money. So so we found that 5 years was about as much as we could deal with. Now, this is schools, and it's a different business. But I do know that I've heard people talk about building things for 20 years and things like that from a size point of view, and to me, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I want to get back to Peter Morrison's question and show you, this is the existing Nantucket Elementary School. Here's the bus circle.
Yeah.
Okay, you walk into the school and the gym's off to your right.
Yeah.
I want to show you this because this is what we would do with the existing school. We are planning for universal preschool because I do believe that inside 5 years, maybe it's 5 to 10, the state and possibly the nation will go to universal preschool. And so for us not to be thinking that way, we would end up with a building that could be too small.
So we're gonna have universal
right up.
daycare, essentially. Kinda.
4-year-olds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, we would move the community school into here. The community school has the early childhood program, ECC, that used to be in the high school. It makes sense to have the ECC in your primary school.
Sure it does.
Those are kids who are 1, 2, 3, 4 years old. This will be their first school.
That's great.
So we want to have the early childhood center right here and the community school offices here. Then the preschool, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and if enrollment doesn't get away from us, the superintendent's offices will move into the primary school.
The new one.
This is the existing school.
I know that, the new L-shaped one.
No, we'll come into this school.
Oh.
Into the
Nantucket
existing
Elementary
amount-
School.
the existing
Oh,
elementary
they're not there now. Okay.
Right,
Oh,
we're
I'm
not
sorry.
there. And
Gray
so
means it's not there yet.
that's,
Okay, I got you.
we'll be moving into that spot. And that's why I want to rent space rather than having a modular, because in 3 years, we could be in that space.
I've got a 1.5-year-old grandson and a
Yep.
4-year-old grandson.
Yep.
And they've been going to school, well, they're already starting the 1.5-year-old in a 2-day, blah, blah, blah. Which, thinking of the employees of the bank, the working parents, the Small Friends
Daycare.
plays a huge role. Well, no, it's school.
Yeah,
Okay,
it is.
Small Friends is a school.
Yeah.
And it's struggling between you and me.
He's asking my question, you're stealing my question.
I'm
We
sorry.
connected?
I know, we're trying.
This is
We're
amazing.
trying. It's just
Go
amazing.
ahead, this is good, I was gonna ask this.
That they're struggling.
Yes, they are.
And they really, if what you say is true, what they're doing should be part of the school system.
So
Possibly?
here's what we're thinking. Because if we move 4th and 5th out, we could have some community spaces here. that could be used.
So those spaces exist currently?
They exist currently, but they're not used in what we have today with numbers. We're looking at this thinking community daycare could come in there. There's not enough good daycare in this community.
Not at all.
They could either rent space from us or have space to use at a, and teachers have young children, municipal workers have young children, banks, everybody is looking for good daycare.
Look at Boys and Girls Club.
So that is a thought. The other thought that might work in one of these spaces is behavioral health. Looking for space. They're on a pretty thin margin of making things work and not. A lot of schools combine health, community health programs and school. I only hedge because by the time this is built and opened, which may be September of 17 or January of 18, if we get it passed in April, I don't know what spaces are going to be available in 3 years.
Yeah, got to be flexible.
We may have, if we have too many kids, I don't need to be in here. And all of a sudden, they pick up 3 classrooms. Great. If we had to. So that we have that built-in flexibility for that. So.
Just a couple of general points I'd like to make about this. I think this is a really enlightened
This is really
concept
good.
of the future.
I like it.
And for those of you who don't know it, there is just an overwhelming body of evidence that preschool is like the best investment you can make in kids. And when you look at the enrollment figures here, where you've got a particular segment, which is the Hispanic population, which is now 1/5 of the enrollment, and by every indication, their proportion, if not their numbers, are going to increase. This is the precise segment of the population that can benefit most. And what I envision happening as a possibility here is you're going to get a synergistic effect, because when parents, particularly hardworking Latino parents, bring their kids to this community institution at the beginning of childhood, and they see how successful it is, the retention rates are going to grow and the attraction is going to increase, and that is going to spur further enrollment. So the vision that I have in a qualitative sense, without going into...
You want to grow it, huh?
I'm not saying you want to grow it. I'm saying it's the...
It's going to happen.
It's
You
the,
believe
it's,
it, they will
it's
come.
either
Can't
the
stop
failure
it.
of success or the success of failure. I think it's the former. The failure of success is that you're creating more demand than you plan for. And this is precisely the kind of plan that you want to have in place to say, we could be looking at a future where there's going to be a lot of growth here, in the same sense that when you look at Obamacare, you say, well, what's the big problem with Obamacare? The problem is you don't have enough doctors to take care of all the people who are now eligible for care. And what you're saying is we want to have contingency plans here for the space to take care of all the kids who may come in. And when you look at the exit point in this, grade progression table here, and start to look at the kind of 12th graders that are coming off the production line, I think Michael has featured at least one of them in, saying that, you start to look at who it is that is the class valedictorian and who's going on, the success stories. More and more of them have Spanish surnames.
Well, I need to double back and could I say something?
Yes.
I need to double back on what I said about Hispanics and Catholics, because I'm one of 7. Okay, I'm second generation. My parents were first generation, and we were the Hispanics of that time.
Sure.
Putting the pressure on the schools. So I don't want to say anything negative there, because I'm one of them.
No, I don't think anybody
No.
Most
saw
of
it
us
that
are.
way.
No, you're 100% right.
If you look at
This is a fact. We have to deal with
how was
this issue.
America founded?
Yeah.
On the backs
Wow.
of immigrants.
It's all part of what we are.
So-
Go ahead, John.
Getting back to the building a little bit and away from the,
Yep.
the speculation and everything else. The building, you know, the one thing that comes across to me that I like, what I hear, and you're talking about, well, we're developing contingencies for a lot of different scenarios. And one of the things that I in the manufacturing business that changed in the 1990s was we built plants differently. We say we don't, in 5 years we could be producing something entirely different than we are producing today. And so we build in a lot of flexibility in those plants, which was so they look different to people. We got into things like movable partitions in office areas and that type of thing. And I don't want to go on and on because there's a million aspects of that. But is that being considered here?
I'll give you an idea of something that's missing.
Like plans of the future and
It's
offices
simple.
of the future.
I'll tell you something that's missing that speaks to your point.
That's a good point.
The basement.
No, there are no computer labs in this school because we will have one-to-one computing. We won't be going into the computer lab. Kids are going to have their devices.
Right, so you're
and they're gonna be
eliminating that
bringing
space.
their devices from class to class. So no longer do we have that separate space or several spaces.
That's
so that's an
excellent.
example
Yeah.
of what you're talking
Well,
about.
hard walls, if you put in hard walls, it is very expensive to tear them down and to change the configuration. If you put in portable walls that are built to move,
Yeah.
those walls don't, actually, those walls prove to us to be cheaper than a built-in wall, and then when you want to move them, you can do it with your own maintenance people. You know what I mean?
What he's saying is don't make cement
No.
interior walls.
Well, it's a
Because the
little
building's made of
difficult
steel and
in the
cement.
classroom
I can-
because of the noise.
Yeah, all,
So
They
some
look
of that
like
is,
walls. You don't even know that.
yeah.
They're just-
But if I can show one more thing, because I know I want to be sensitive to
We
you.
want to be sensitive to your time, too. Go ahead.
Yep.
This is the middle school piece. Here's Surfside Road, entrance to the high school, entrance to the middle school. There's a road here,
Yep.
comes behind, just to orient you. Right now, the wood shop
Yep.
is here.
Yep.
One idea is to move the middle school wood shop next to the high school wood shop on the vocational wing, which to me and makes a lot of sense.
Get
We-
the middle schoolers hanging out with the older kids.
Well, yeah. Or learning from the two woodshop teachers can work together, projects.
Yeah.
You've got,
Synergy here.
and then you bring this across, so you've already picked up 2 classrooms by doing that. So instead of maybe 6 classroom addition, maybe now we're looking at a 4 classroom addition to come back towards the cafeteria here. One idea might make it a little bit more expensive. Do we build it so that we can build up? None of the other buildings were built with the idea of eventually going up.
Yes.
And so for this section, if you do that, you have the ability to add 4 classrooms
We gotta
in the
do that.
future if you needed it. A little more expensive initially in the construction.
But it's worth it.
Wow.
But you're planning for the future.
Very small.
Should be building a parking garage.
It's small, it's
Let
small.
alone the school
It
high.
should be small addition. That building, the difference between building something you can build up and not is not in terms of, if you do it when you're building it, isn't a big
Yeah.
dollar item.
So we
That's the
can't,
materials and
the
everything.
existing 1 through 5, we can't go up in that
Can't go
building.
up.
Oh, my goodness.
And what about the new one?
What a mistake.
You know, the new one, we will have 2 floors.
You're not going to
Are
have
you
it
saying,
free.
would we go 3? Would we build it so that we could go 3? I don't know, first of all, on Nantucket, whether you could go that height restriction.
There's land running.
What do you think the boys' club's doing?
Eventually, you either go up or down,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
You can't go out, not like the Midwest where they can just,
What about going down? Finished basements, in-floor heat and cement, that's free dirt. That's your 3rd floor, is the
something about
basements.
lighting restrictions in
There are some
schools.
lighting.
water table?
There are some lighting.
No, no water
restrictions.
table issues up there.
There are some lighting restriction issues for some.
Public buildings?
For some of classroom spaces, for the education space, teaching spaces.
Okay.
That being said, certainly
I don't
there
understand.
are-
What's wrong with
There are
lights?
some.
Like lights?
No, you have like natural
It's
light.
Natural light.
Oh, God.
It's natural light.
This is,
What about all the equipment? Like, we're not going to have,
There's
so
certainly-
that's good if it
there's-
can be all
We talked
downstairs.
about Bacchus Lane, there certainly are options potentially for some space.
No.
for-
I mean,
for equipment.
boilers and
That's what I'm talking about.
HVAC.
That's what I'm talking about.
Good.
Talk about
Equipment.
storage.
Equipment and/or storage.
You look at.
That's
have you
good.
been
So
to
something
East
can get
Bay?
done down there.
I haven't had
Okay.
the tour.
Why don't you come over? I could show you what we've done, because it's very new, and we use the basement extremely
down.
well. The generator's out back, and you can see what we've done in the basement, which
And tonight,
keeps it off of the ground floor.
and his bag, and I'm not trying to go into the planning board stuff, but it's interesting. Your idea about one way in your, like, 4 slides ago thing, tonight, Commons Lane. That's good. That idea of having a road go in and just sort of disperse people so that they're not all congested into one spot. We opened up Dan's Pharmacy, fixed the turn. It's unbelievable how nice it works. That's what you're talking about. The other thing I want to tell you, Mike, before we kind of, I'm going to tune out here in a minute because my list is getting bigger for work today. You know what the biggest thing that you're doing to sell? I think about the big picture, like Peter's doing, but from a Nantucket voter mindset, you're redeveloping existing dirt, existing buildings. This is good stuff. You're not just throwing away 5 dump trucks and saying, we need 5 new dump trucks. That stuff is very negative. This is good, what you're doing, because you're thinking about today and tomorrow at the same time, using the same dirt, the same wood, kind of recycling our campus, and use that word. That's good to use.
Right. One of the concerns eventually will be keeping the campus, the campus.
That's
You know,
good.
we can do it for the next 10 years, arguably 20, 30, but someday this is going to be too confined. And, you know, I don't think, I don't know when that day will be, but that's something that we'll have to fight. This is just a rendition. This is not the school, but we wanted something to start to give people a vision of what it might be and get people excited about it, because when you can start to see this instead of this,
Yeah.
I think it gets people excited. We asked the architects to make it look like it would belong on Nantucket. But again, I want to caution people, this isn't the school.
It would make a nice town building at
Just
2
a rendition.
fairgrounds. I'm sorry, I just got distracted.
Just two closing thoughts. Michael, I think this was great. As far as the plans I see on the Board of Selectmen that are presented to me have not been, your thoughts, Lowell's absolutely right, your thoughts behind it are more important than the plans I actually see in front of me. Because I know you'll get there for the ideal thing. 2 things. One, I feel that as far as if you're going to build a new building, they say when I build a houses, a third of your cost is your roof, so your basement is your cheapest square footage.
Bob Little just had that conversation yesterday with us.
So
Yeah.
I'd encourage you, in light of storage or any possible scenarios, if you make a big, huge basement and you put heat in, make it nice, decent, you don't know what it is, you got that space.
That's right.
You got it. Your offices might have to be down there. I'm sorry, but it's
don't know.
great space. Secondly, I think when I look out at the community and I see the benefit we're going to get, everybody's going to get, the summer folks are going to get, for having this school on Nantucket, I say, I like the fact that you're keeping the finances down, but let's make sure we build a nice building, and we don't cut corners, and we design a building that's great for kids to learn in. That's how I feel, and I'm going to be very vocal about that, but I feel very strongly about that. When you look at the big picture, it's really important.
That's, of course, music to my ears. I am concerned about the price that we bring forward. And I am concerned about, trying to cut too much.
Yeah, no, you should.
So that, and it's that delicate balance.
Sure.
I will tell you that this building, which was 34,000 square feet, okay, now we're looking at a 70,000 square foot building, plus a 10,000 square foot addition.
Yes.
Okay, so keep that, I'm going to put this in context for you.
Yep.
This building at 34,000 square feet was 15.5 million. A few years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago,
Probably 5, I don't know.
okay? 15.5 for half the size that we're talking about, all right? I originally ballparked this on a real wag, at 30+ million, right? This is going to be, with what we want to do and the addition, it's going to be 40 to 45.
Split those two up, please.
That's hard to do, and I don't know if I want to put you on the spot.
What's going to happen?
But probably 40, I don't know, 40 million and 5 million?
Yeah, and
Oh, so we're talking 45 million now?
Can I touch on that just really quickly? This building was 15.5 million, but the town had 1.875 for the design on top of the 15.5. This figure that we're giving you today is all in. That includes the owner's project manager, which we didn't pay for in this building because Charlie Gibson took that on.
Right.
That is generally about 3% of the cost. Your design is between 8 and 10% of your cost. So when we say 45 million, that includes the design cost and the OPM and the construction. So I just wanted to make that point.
What we should have done is come to the community for the design costs first before the building was built. If I had had the time and the luxury of doing that, I might have done that way first. But we can't wait beyond this April to get this project going.
I think this is great. I love the way you're doing it.
That's why we're all
I'd rather
in.
you do it this way than the other way.
Well,
Okay.
Well, I know that we've been going back
Have
and
you-
forth with other buildings with the same issue, so
Okay.
I don't think we kind of have a consensus on that. It's tough
Design one
either
piece,
way.
right.
But the
Build
question,
it.
people are going to say, gee, 45 million for a school? What did we pay for that huge police station? It wasn't anywhere near that, wasn't it? Was it?
15.
Well, it was
15.5,
plus
Why
2.
the huge difference?
because it's
wow.
twice the size. It's more than twice the size.
That's one
Public,
answer.
Is one
public
answer.
Okay,
building
that's
codes.
one.
MSBA drives so much.
Correct. That's
What was it?
Massachusetts School Building Authority
That's
drives,
different environment.
3, it's 5 years, 10 years later.
right,
Steel and cement.
those are the,
They drive
That's what
space.
people,
Yeah.
I'm not a native,
No,
but I
no,
think
You're
that's
absolutely
what
right.
they're going to say.
and we're going to say this isn't just for space for the elementary, this is also space for the middle school, and it also creates space by getting the superintendent's office out of the high school, so it gives us space K through 12. And I think that's the
Plan for the
other
next 5 years.
response.
You know, I have a suggestion. This is a legitimate point for the uninformed taxpayer to raise here. How come it costs so much? And one metric that would be useful, if you can get it anywhere, would be just to say, when schools construct educational space in today's world in other communities, they pay anywhere from X to Y per square foot. That's what we're paying. I mean, to say, why does a school cost more than a police station?
I actually
Why does a
have,
Mercedes-Benz cost more than a...
But to the layman, though, you're right about both points.
Yeah.
I shared with the building committee other school construction in the last 3 years on the mainland with them. And that's one of the things that we will use as our argument for this. Now, granted, we're not building a high school, which is more expensive. But I can give you a couple things off the top of my head. Newton, well-to-do town, 190 million for their new high school. 194 million, actually. Okay? Ours isn't that big, and it's not a high school. Weston Elementary School, another fairly well-to-do community.
I guess.
What's that?
I guess.
We haven't got the sherbet and
I
dough yet.
graduated from Weston High School, so.
Well, that's a pretty nice town.
So,
Yeah,
Pretty
they
expensive
know.
real estate.
but my point is,
But Newton also
70
got MSBA money.
70,000 square feet, about the same size, for 30-something million, 35 million a couple of years ago. So we have some comps. Monomoy, at 50-something,
60.
50,
50 was-
59, 60 million.
So you don't think the Nantucket factor is going to have a huge role in this?
I think it's going to have a factor. Oh,
Is
absolutely.
it going to be, off island plus 30, off island plus 20? I mean, that's
Square
the count.
footage,
What do you
cost.
think, Diane?
I called MSBA and asked what, because we applied for MSBA money. It's doubtful that we'll see it
Because we're
because of
rich.
the condition of our schools, because we were in the queue 2008, 9, and 10, then we dropped off, and then we went back into the queue this year. And they say you have to be in the queue for a few years before you actually get something, but we can't wait.
Is this state subsidy? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Fluffy money.
They, just to put it in
Because I was going to ask
perspective,
that question.
they have 115 schools in the queue.
Applicants.
They will approve 10. I am saying to our constituents, you bet we filed, because people would be rightly upset if we hadn't.
Yes.
But don't count on
Yeah.
it. Don't count on it.
And it's not 100% reimbursement.
Right.
It's reimbursable,
And it pushes
approved.
it.
It's a percentage of reimbursement based on their determination of certain square footages. So it's program-driven as well.
Any other major questions? Because
So
we're
I
at
just
we're at
wanted to make-
9:30.
I know you are.
Because you asked
And I just want to
this
make sure we get the answers,
question.
too.
The
I
answer
mean,
was
it's important.
420 to 480, and she told me to go 480 because it's Nantucket per
Yeah.
square foot.
Yeah.
That was her answer to me.
Richard?
My question is, what is your public information campaign going to look like?
We are working on, we have two committees of the building committee. We have about 22 members of the building committee representing all constituents in the community. We have teachers, we have administrators, we have town, we have Andrew Vorse, Mike Burns, we have
Peter?
senior citizens,
Yeah, you got a good mix.
we have Peter McEachern. We have a lot of different constituencies. There are two major subcommittees. One is site review that has worked on selecting the site, and the other is public outreach committee. The public outreach or marketing committee consists of website development, which is actually website, Twitter, all media pieces. We have a letter writing subcommittee. We have video being made.
FAQs.
We have a group working on FAQs.
Good.
Friends of the Nantucket Public Schools?
I have met with the Friends of Nantucket Public Schools. They're going to work on voter registration. So we have subcommittees of that group already in play. Our real push will begin after Christmas. We didn't want to start too early, lose momentum, and then try to regain. So we've been doing our groundwork, getting things ready, and starting January, February, March. We're going to be ramping up each month with our outreach. We are setting up dog and pony shows, which are, I've done Rotary, I'm doing the brown bag lunch, but we're also going into the neighborhood groups, Nevers, you name it. We will take our show to anybody that will listen, large group or small, because again, 2/3, it's 2 yeses for every no.
So you need to get the approval from the Capital Program Committee.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to get it.
So do we have any more questions about that particular side of things? Because we're trying to help them do their jobs, and I think this is wonderful.
Having the support of each of the municipal groups,
Is important.
Capital, FinCom, Board of Selectmen, will make our work easier.
One more question.
It's not a question. I'd just like to make a statement, which I think we should recognize that there is a broad degree of discretion as to how much or how little money a community wants to spend on investing in the next generation of its children. And in our circumstance, I think, what I've heard here is that I like the balance between how much we're willing to invest relative to other communities that provide some kind of a benchmark. And, I would like to go on record, if we can, to say that we think the right balance has been struck in terms of what we need for the future and how it is positioned to accommodate the unknowns that lie ahead, and it represents an opportunity for us to strengthen an institution beyond simply a narrow educational function to serving a broader community purpose in the same way that the Athenaeum serves that purpose. I mean, what you're trying to do here partly overlaps with what is done at the Athenaeum. And I think people will recognize that this is the kind of investment that a community can choose to make.
Well, we've got a lot of those kind of things that we're going to have to be
The
wrestling
question
with.
you didn't ask that I'll offer out, and thanks to Brian and Libby for getting this to me, the cost for a $40 million project,
Here we go.
tax impact on a
$20 a year.
$1 million home, on a $1 million home, is $133.
Yeah.
Estimated.
This is
Estimated.
For how
No.
many years?
20. Isn't it
So
20?
is it usually
Yeah.
20? You always do 20?
It's about what you might
Okay.
consider paying for a year in a private school.
All right. Can I say something now? This is the elephant in the room issue. All right. Brian's only been here for 15 minutes. Mike's been here for a couple hours. This is the big, huge issue right here. How do you tell the public that it's not costing them anything when they're spending $40 million that 80% is paid for by seasonal residents? Complicated.
89%.
Whatever. 89. Don't even go
Plus
that far.
residential exemption.
All right. Okay.
Did you use the metric he just?
I know, but Peter, I know, but look what just happened with some of this other stuff. I think that the debt service rate issue, interest rate long-term, is better to kind of talk about it. You can talk about the tax rate, but use the debt service interest of today, right now. Steamship just got new bonds, 2.1 million saved over the next how many years, just by reissuing existing bonds. Just happened yesterday, okay? And talk about the land use. I'm telling you, this land use of refiguring this, this Rubik's Cube of stuff here is perfect because of what's going on with that hospital. The public is so engaged right now in dirt use, it's unbelievable. So you're using the dirt that you already have for the next 50 years. That is a selling feature. I'm telling you it is, if you say it right. The other thing I want to say to you, the project guy, what was your name again? I forgot. Dick.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
No. I forgot your name. You got to get some kind of, when you go on this public thing, you got to get like a, what are those things when you have the model?
Well, it's not really designed yet, but yes. that's-
Something that you can go like this, okay, we're taking this Lego and we're going to put this Lego in, okay? And the other issue is fall town meeting. I know that we're not supposed to talk about that, but if this doesn't, I don't know if it can go in 2 phases. Libby's not here to answer those questions. I don't know. Diane, you might know. Like, can we get something for April and then have a special town meeting for the school if we had to do it in the fall of next
We
year?
talked about
Is that going to
splitting
screw up the whole building plan?
We talked about splitting out the design OPM.
Because there's so much stuff that's going to be April. This is going to turn into a public hearing at town meeting. I can feel it. And that's the problem.
If you get to it, because the hospital is going to be the same.
Fire station thing, I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff.
I'd also like,
Confused.
I
I don't know if you want to make this
wouldn't
point, but
Let me
No, you don't
ask
think
this.
that's a problem?
I wouldn't try to move anything. I'd go with the way you're going.
Yeah.
Well, me too, but I'm saying
if
this,
it doesn't pass, then we'll definitely be
You
looking at
want-
the fall.
That you cross that bridge
Yes.
when you get to it.
yeah.
Don't forget,
The need
it's a two-step hurdle though, too.
But I don't think
If it goes as a debt if it goes as a debt exclusion, it's a two-step hurdle. It's a
Okay.
town meeting and a ballot vote.
Right.
Right.
So, and more than likely, quite frankly, at $40 million, there's really no way to finance this project other than a debt exclusion.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to finance this through the levy limit. So this is a two-step process. They have to get town meeting approval.
Then they go to ballot.
And then you have to have a ballot to exempt the debt.
Well, I would assume that. Yeah.
Because
Yep.
I think painting all the signs.
But that vote has to be within, I believe, I'd have to check, but I'm
It's-
pretty
it's a-
sure that
there's
it's
a window.
there's a 90-day window
Yep.
from the date that it's approved at town meeting or whatever that's been.
The number that we
election,
have
the
in our
ballot.
capital plan right now, I think is 40 million.
40.
What, so you said 45, and that's
For
why I
that
was
other
trying to
building.
have you break it
January.
up. Pardon me?
We will have the definitive in January, but
I'm presenting to the FinCom on December
in December.
17th.
So breaking it up,
We are, not me. We are.
You do a good job.
okay.
Finish
We're meeting, what's today?
Meeting tomorrow.
Tomorrow, Thursday, and I'll give you a call.
Because what we're also trying to do is wrap this into all the other capital projects.
Yes.
This is huge for
I understand.
2016
Yeah.
for a model,
Yeah.
which will show some of the things we've been talking about.
We'll
the
help,
finding-
we'll help the whole bigger picture, help the school fit into the bigger picture. And we're going to
Exactly.
try to help
You know, I appreciate that because I am sensitive to the fact that, you know, the first figure out there was 30,
Yeah.
and now it's
Yeah.
40, and now it might be 45.
In all honesty, it
and-
wasn't your problem.
It sounded like the sewer
We
plant.
plugged the
But
number.
yeah,
Well,
that's
I
what I'm
know, but
saying.
I still am sensitive to that, and, you know, people get their head wrapped around one thing, and then when you change it, they gotta change their thinking, and we need to get a better, more reliable figure out there
Okay,
faster.
then just, we're asking that question of you
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
it.
The
The
next
reason
year,
though is because we didn't have the design money ahead of time. So it's difficult to put a more accurate cost estimate to it because we don't have the design.
Well, believe it or not, this committee is encouraging people to put a bigger number in for design
Yeah.
than
But
they
what-
even requested.
Where's the
One
wood?
factor that plays in here is the start date. I know with the new fire station, they're saying, if you start this date, it's this much, add 4% per year
Right.
for every year later than you actually start digging.
Well, that fits into my debt service interest issue. You know what I mean? With their stuff, with the override, but tying it into the interest is the selling feature.
Sure. this is
and
the
that's
time
not
of our-
necessarily
You know?
accurate. I'd be careful about that.
Well, that's
because-
something that our modeling is.
Yeah,
gonna-
yeah, but model,
I just
model,
want to
model.
go back to a
Just be
suggestion I
careful.
made, just to tie the ribbons on all the discussion we've had today. Is it appropriate for us to consider some kind of a formal motion where we all agree that this is a great idea? I mean, put it-
That's just
Conceptually.
It's part of the process. I
Today-
don't think we have to do it today. And
I'd just like to get it on the record that we think it.
We
the
understand.
The strategy going forward is what I
Excellent.
think if I'm hearing.
It's just part of the normal process that we do anyway, Peter,
Bill,
right?
can I,
John must talk to you.
well, I don't want to talk. I just want to, I just want to say, we have to deliver before the FinCom on the, what is it, 17th? You know, and it certainly, if we could have a number that's not going to move again, because, you know, the
I appreciate
negativity, and this is what Toby was saying, we got to stop that number from keep continuing to move. And that's going to be a visible thing. It's a public meeting, visible thing, and so,
Once you go to FinCom and the VOS, it's really public.
yeah. So you really
But
want
didn't
to,
the
that's
woodshop
right.
thing figure into that?
Well, I'm hoping so.
That's what I'm
and
wondering.
that's something
That's all
else we're
I'm
going to
wondering.
talk about.
That's part of
I'll
the
get that
number
to you.
What I
Bill.
keep trying to get
I will
at.
get it.
Because, the FinCom thinks that the 17th is the be-all and end-all, and we know that April's still a long ways away from there, but they kind of want to wrap up the capital.
Yeah.
I mean, that's but we don't report to the FinCom, between you and me. We report to the selectmen. But we
Yeah,
kind
we're
of represent the
preparing
capital
for them.
part of FinCom's work, so we are a very big aid to them. So whatever we can get done by the 17th is very important.
Okay.
And it's very public.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Nice job.
No,
Really
don't be
good
sorry.
job.
You've done a
I'm
great job.
impressed with it.
We appreciate it.
We asked lots of questions. So.
And you had a lot of great answers.
I love it. I think they're
Thank
doing
you.
a fantastic
So
job.
we're going to spend 15 minutes just talking about Among Us.
Yeah.
When the public sector, get really excited, because it's very high.
You know what I mean?
They're using existing.
Richard had a, Brian?
Richard, I have a Doug Bennett type question. Who?
The plumbing inspector? Oh, never mind, I'm sorry.
I need help with a definition of what free cash is, how it's distributed or disposed of, and then I have a follow-up.
Okay, I'll give you the short answer.
Okay?
It essentially is revenue, excess revenue over excess or unused expenditures with a bunch of other machinations from reserves and unused reserves and changes in reserves and changes in deferred revenue and accounts receivable,
Okay, so my follow-up would be.
basically. I mean,
I see it broken out as general fund and then the enterprise funds.
Yep.
So, just as an example, the airport is looking for, pick a number, $750,000 for their capital request this year.
okay,
It says that there's $1.8 million in free cash.
and retained earnings, right.
Retained.
Why wouldn't they take, this is a dumb question, but why wouldn't they just take their capital request of $700,000 against that 1.8?
Well, they very well could be. That could be the funding source for some of it versus borrowings or whatever the options are. I mean, that's how they choose to fund it, or, I mean, I work with Tom obviously, but how the airport commission decides to proceed. 750 would basically be almost taking 50% of it for an entity that, I've only been here probably 12 minutes now, not 15, but from what I know about the history of the airport, I'm not sure that I would want to say that we should take almost 50% of the retained earnings in 1 year for capital projects, given the prior issues that have gone on. But
And you need that money
Could
for
I-
something else.
I could add something to that, because
Right.
FinCom's going to look at that very carefully, because when we look at their 2015 plan, or 2016 plan,
Yeah.
you know, the question of, because there's a town subsidy potentially involved here, and I can speak as one member of FinCom, there's going to be a lot of pressure on them if they're saying, we're going to take a subsidy from the town and we're going to maintain our retained earnings. We're going to say, well, let's talk about that.
well, I mean, right now I know that there's
So if that helps, because that's how you get at it a little bit. You know, when you look at an enterprise fund, you're looking at individual businesses.
Yeah.
And so the first question we ask ourselves is, are we subsidizing it? In the case of the water company, we say, well, yeah, we're not subsidizing it, but we are, because the taxpayer is paying fees, or some of the taxpayers are. So the issue is always then, with the water company, are your fees going to go up in what you're wanting to do? Or can you fund it from a combination of free cash and operations? And so it is a little bit more, how you apply that is a little bit more complicated, but we'll get at that, I can tell you. At some-
I guess the question
Last
Richard's asked, go ahead, once you ask it
Last
instead.
question. Sticking with airport, we did have to subsidize them, and they're repaying the town. Where does-
we're in the process of finalizing the agreement for the repayment of that.
Where will that money go?
It will go into a revenue account on the town side. Okay, then it'll be certified as free cash and can be used in the following year.
Okay.
Wow, that's called
Good question.
Good answer. No.
It's good gobbledygook.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Good gobbledygook. No, it is.
So the general fund, some portion of that, I think we tried to set up a little bit of a formula in years past, that 50% would go toward capital, 25% would go toward general fund, and 25% would go into some sort of a reserve fund.
Of what?
Capital
Of the
reserve
free
fund.
cash?
The free cash.
Well, I know last year.
That didn't happen, I know.
Well, no, last year you used $1 million went to the stabilization account.
Yes.
Roughly 4.125 or some number
Yeah.
right in there went to capital and other articles, and then there was 188,000 that was actually voted to be funded as part of the operating budget in the motion. So that's the way it was distributed last year.
Mhm.
I mean, we're still working through recommendations right now with the numbers, so I don't have any real good answer on what the split might look like right this minute.
Okay. As we're getting closer and closer to having these final numbers on all the different programs, the role of Cinder comes
Yep.
into play very heavily. And are you way ahead of us on that with Cinder?
We've already had the conversation, which is why when we first got the original plan, we sent the plan off to her and we had her do a worst-case scenario, so the mock-ups were already built.
Right.
So now it's basically telling her, okay, this is what the capital committee is recommending in this year. These we're going to push into out years. Now, what does it look like? And then we'll discuss potential smoothing methods. One thing I have to caution everybody too is let's take the school, for instance, okay? We give the number of what we think it would do to a tax rate today, but the likelihood is that borrowing is not going to be done for 3 or 4. The permanent borrowing,
Yep.
which would actually impact the tax rate, is not for 3 or 4 more years.
Why couldn't we model it that way?
We can model it any way you want, but I have,
No,
modeling
not
it that
the
way.
way I want
No,
it,
no,
but
but
what
I'm
you
saying
think's
the
gonna
way
happen.
anybody wants, but the problem with doing that
Yeah.
is that trying to project a tax rate 5 years from now is
For an
much-
interest rate or a tax rate?
Well, the tax rate,
Interest
the
rate,
impact
too.
on the tax rate, because you have to do it 5 years from now means that I have to project out what the assessed valuation of the town is going to look like over a 5-year period of time, which right now is
I think
really.
we
so
built
that-
that
Gilbert
in the
knows the
past.
answer.
We
No,
did it.
nobody knows the answer to
You don't
what
think
that's.
so?
We don't know the answer, but
Because
we
it
built it.
fluctuates.
I know,
So
but
it
didn't we
can
build it
fluctuate up
in?
and down.
Didn't we build it in as a 2.5% increase each
No,
year?
they built it in with no change to the assessed valuation, which is never really.
Really?
Yeah,
Yes.
and no new growth. That's the way they did it.
But am I correct, though, that at least you've nailed down today's interest rates? I mean, when
Well, we're
you say
using
4 or 5
4.5.
years-
We're using 4.5, but I can assure you that it will be much less than
Yeah,
4.5.
it's gonna be way less than
Okay,
that.
so you've got a conservative assumption
Right.
about interest rate,
Yeah.
you've got an assessed value you don't know about, and your characterization of it could be based on property as it is now
Right,
assessed.
absolutely.
This is what the
Yeah.
effect would be.
No,
You
that's
look
a
at your
good way
property
to do
and
it.
say, do I expect it's going to go up or down?
Yeah.
Probably going to go up.
That's a good, but that's all right.
So let's see.
We can do it that way.
So
And
the
when
seven-
Cinder did it the original way,
Yeah.
the first was
Yeah.
just not with any smoothing, which we had always projected. And it's like in the original with the 70+ million here, I said we haven't done any smoothing techniques
Yeah.
to this at all. This is worst case scenario if I bored it all today.
You know, the
okay?
problem with that is, it's the same problem that Michael had with us giving him a $30 million
Yeah.
number. You know, once
Perception.
you say, well, it's out there, but gosh, this is conservative, and there's no
Perception.
smoothing, and they say, well,
There's nothing you can do.
damn it, smooth it.
The paper sells
You know what I'm saying?
papers
I'm
off of-
sorry, I didn't mean to curse.
And you know the thing that's sad about what you just said, Phil?
No.
Is
No.
the today's building with the M, what was it called? The regulation thing, that's M something something.
MSBA.
Whatever, yeah. People think it's like we're buying a car, in 1970. I mean, it's so complicated. And when the public acts like it's not, that's unfair to anybody involved with this process.
It is, but anything you can do to.
I know,
peel
no, I
away
agree,
any of
I
those,
know.
Quote, well,
I know.
we're going to smooth it, that just prompts another question. Well,
Yeah.
what's.
The
what is
smoothing
smoothing?
technique
You gotta
didn't
do
catch
the-
my
you
ear.
gotta
What
do
does
the
that
right
mean?
thing.
What
And
does
the right
smoothing
thing-
technique mean?
It means basically smoothing is mitigating the impact over the course of the
The
forecast
debt
of
service?
the tax rate. So
Okay.
that it's,
All right.
So
it's more
you
of
can
a,
do some
so
short-term
it's
debt
not-
the first 5 years,
Right,
and then you go to
right.
long-term debt for the next 25 or something. But we should kind of do a little bit
Well,
of
we
that.
can, absolutely.
In
The
the
problem
mob.
is, to your point about people getting married to something,
Yeah.
if I smooth it one way, everybody gets married to that, and if the bottom falls out of the economy tomorrow, my smoothing is no good anymore.
John has a retort.
Yeah, we've been through this. When we tried to develop a long-term plan, the biggest resistance we got from everybody was, we don't know what's going to happen in 5 years. How can we have a long-term plan? Okay?
Fine, long term.
And you sit there and say, well, hell, if you don't have a long-term plan, it becomes what we've done in the past. Surprise every year.
That is a long-term plan.
Yeah.
Long-term
Yeah,
non-plan.
it's
It's
a lot.
reactive
Yeah.
and
So the
proactive.
point is,
Yeah.
Very reactive.
you got to get away from being, I've lived with this for 40 years and trying to develop 10-year
And
plans
how many
in
on this
business.
income?
In business, and that is, people are always going to say, well, didn't last year you say this? Yes, I did. Well, you changed, didn't you? Yes, I did.
It's a plan.
You got to get used to that.
I'm not, look, I was really kind of reacting more to Phil's statement that people get married to something than,
Yeah, I know,
than not
but-
being, I'm in favor of it. I want to do it. I have no problem doing it. I can do 5 different models and we can pick the one to
Okay.
use collaboratively. I have no problem with it,
Yeah.
and it's the way we should be doing business.
Yes. And and people are going to say to you, gee, this changed, didn't it? And you're going to say, yes, it did.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is
They'll
we
never
have
get
a-
used to change unless we start the process.
I don't want to pile on here, but we're talking about 2016 right now and modeling 2016, but we really got to model
Well, we're modeling it all.
the
because
10 years.
They have
That's
the
right.
10
Because
years.
we haven't really focused a heck of a
Right.
lot. We've pushed some stuff out, but I mean, we've not done
That's
something in 2016. But where does it fit into the,
Well,
the
that's the
next
second
9
piece
years?
of
So
this
we really got to start working on
They
that,
modeled
maybe after the
everything for me.
17.
I'm glad
when
you
we
brought
did
that
it.
up. That's good. One?
I want to just reiterate something I've said several times before, which is the only thing that I would ask from the modeling is to set some kind of bounds on, it will range from this to that if we envision any kind of plausible way to finance all of these infrastructure projects. When I say X to Y, what I'm saying is we could have it as low as $100 a year for the next 30 years on your tax bill, or it could be $200 a year for the next 3 years, then it gradually goes down to $150. And it all is a function of how much of it you want to put off to the next generation, or how long you want the debt to extend. It's like a mortgage. And the key thing to understand is that this is a great time to lock in those low rates. So
And debt's running off.
Yeah, and if you just establish
Well,
the
that's the
bounds,
other thing.
and we don't have to, it's not rocket science, just say, what's the worst case, and then what's another alternative way of smoothing? Just say, if you've got $1 million piece of property, you're talking about something in this range for something like this many years to that many years to have this orderly process of upgrading your community. If it's a $2 million house, it'll be about this. All of this is premised on what we know today about assessed values. If you think your house is going to go up in value, you're going to become property rich, and your tax might go from 100 to 120.
Well, when we do the modeling, we do it in a way that shows what the value would be per 100,000, so
Yeah.
anybody can figure, if
Right.
you know what your assessed value is, you can figure out what your impact is.
John?
And the other part of this thing, just to close the loop here, is that if for some reason people don't like the way that works going forward, you have this resident exemption that you can tinker with and say, well, if it's a bit unequal, it's a little too unequal for our taste, you can adjust that up and down in the future if you want 5, 10 years from now. Say, well, we're going to give you a bigger exemption or a smaller exemption. There are all sorts of ways of adjusting it.
Peter's never really in politics.
I was going to say.
I was going to say that same thing. The only one that's an elected official around this table is Tobias. The rest of us are just taxpayers trying to do the right thing for our town.
I'm elected even though no one runs against me.
Oh, you elected too?
Yeah.
And head of the, or no?
Technically.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I just got two short things I'm going to say. Number one, keep it simple,
Yeah.
because I listened to what Peter said.
He's got it down, I think.
Keep it simple,
Yeah.
because it's going to change anyway, so don't worry about it, just keep it simple. The second thing is, this crap about doing it today, because the rates are, what you just said, I wish a lot of people could hear, because we're not going to borrow the money today.
Right.
Okay? So doing it while the rate, and does anybody know what the rates are going to be in 5 years? No. And I can tell you that because I study that all the time for a different reason. So you can say that and make people feel good, but you're lying.
I
When you
thought
do that.
you borrowed it all.
Borrowing today
Chief
is
Economist for
cheap
State
today
Street.
is a lot of crap.
We,
So you issue bonds for one project more than one time?
no, we take short-term notes.
Okay.
We don't permanently borrow at the beginning of a project because for large-scale borrowings, you have arbitrage rules that if we don't expend the money within certain timeframes, we can get.
So that's
can
why
put at
you use
risk the tax exempt
4%.
status.
4 is
Okay,
conservative.
so we have to be very
Okay,
careful.
okay.
That's why
Four
we use
covers you.
short-term.
I didn't know that, John.
But the actuality of borrowing today, because it's cheap money, let me tell you something, you're not borrowing today.
Right.
And that's the point. And so I get nervous when people say that, because I think you're misrepresenting something when you say that.
What, that we're borrowing it today?
Today,
If we
because it's cheap money.
Well, no, I don't, money's not, the interest rate's low, but I don't think it's really cheap. I mean, it's.
Well, yeah, it's
Still have to
Yeah.
pay, still
No,
have to pay,
I-
still have to pay
concept
it.
is a lot
Yeah,
of crap.
yeah.
Anything else here? Because I know we're running over.
Yeah, well,
That's
Tobias, did you want to? So, I appreciate all the questions you ask. I think we're really helping,
No, this is good. These guys got
I
it
think
going
you're really
on.
helping
I'm
the
very
people
excited
that are
about that.
presenting to us. And, you know, as I say, we represent a vast base of taxpayers out there thinking the same kind of way we're thinking. So,
This-
you know, we're not running for election, I'm not, mostly we're not. So we're just trying to help the town.
But Phil,
But he's on the
this guy here, this group is doing it in a way that doesn't look like they're acting like, I need a new fire truck, I need a new this, I need a new, like it's just no big deal. They've taken that land
and they're working.
and making it work. That is huge for a public sector.
Don't you wish we were doing the same thing for the whole town?
We are a little
But we're
now.
trying, we are trying
A
very
little
hard.
bit.
We are trying.
I'd rather do nothing than do it wrong. And the other thing that Peter chimed in 3 or 4 times on this topic is they're doing, and I don't know how to say it, perfectly, but we're going to have to come up with the right way to talk about this in April.
That's right.
Is they're building the stuff that they're building now, even the small stuff, like the little thing with the wood shop, is a permanent solution within a big plan. I like that.
Yep.
This isn't a motorhome project where we're just going to air up the tires in 20 years and spend $100 million. You know what I'm saying? I like that. So
Well, they,
it's
good. Someone's got to speak for them, and it can't be the consultant.
unfortunately,
It's got to be Cozart.
Cozart's good.
He's good.
First time I've ever really listened to him.
He's very
he's
believable.
good.
He's very trustworthy. But you go to
when you
bring
brought
the
up-
consultants in, and then you say
When you brought up small friends,
That'll kill
Yeah.
it.
you know what I wanted to say about that? A little bit differently than you did.
Okay.
Do they have to, as a public entity, and you're on that committee, right, Peter? Okay. You haven't said nothing yet today, so.
Good listener.
Yeah, I am too, even though it doesn't seem that way. Do they have to plan for like some of these private schools kind of going defunct and all of a sudden having more kids like that they don't expect? Is that kind of part of some of this stuff? I like this elementary school fix.
From the site design and the design concepts, not really.
However,
I see
Some of
least,
that is-
I see a
Small
potential
Friends,
for,
Small Friends does about 60 kids, right?
I'm just saying,
But
I'm talking about the whole thing, not just the preschool, but like the school part. Like, in other words, there was a big, when Lightship, all these schools started, Lighthouse, it was all at the same time kind of thing. Small Friends was the last one, but you know what I'm trying to say. The new school was the first one, then Lighthouse, then this thing. Is that, like, someday being thought of as like, okay, all of a sudden this stuff might not end up being long-term,
Well,
and
they
they
can
have to go to the public
what I was
schools?
going to say, 60 is all they can handle, and that's like from.
So it's not a big deal
3
to
months
take
to
'em
5
in,
years.
if it ever
They
happens.
don't even accommodate all the need at all.
Well,
Okay.
leeway was.
Okay.
I'd keep it simple, though.
I don't know how
You
much
can't
leeway was
really get into
there.
that, but it's nice that they are thinking ahead. That
I also saw a potential for leasing space. I like what they're doing. The parking issue is another whole.
Parking, can I bring it, why, I look at that overall plan, this is extraneous a little bit. I'm looking at, is the parking maxed out at the ice rink? It doesn't look like it when you look at that plan.
Not at one time. And the ice rink sold those lots next door because they ran out of money. It's too bad we didn't capture that. That was only 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Complicated. This land issue at the school is going to be, this Bacchus Lane thing, I'm telling you, is a 100-year-old mindset. That is going to kind of go away somehow as things move on. I think.
Did you-
So,
I'd like to talk about sewer a little bit and kind of, I know.
You had your
my
workshop
background.
last week,
Just to kind of,
I was there, I know.
no, we're over time, but I think it's important to talk.
Okay,
I do too.
I brought
I was there.
yeah, I know some of the gentlemen were there, but I know we have a lot of questions and it dictates, but I brought the big version, I don't know if you could all look at
Yeah.
it, but it kind of lays out, and one thing, I would really recommend going through the CWMP and taking a look at it.
the newest email from Libby, the updated one?
2,000
No,
pages.
Just the 2,000 pages, the
Little
first,
light reading.
the first apex.
Obamacare?
It's very fascinating.
Okay.
Very
Read
fascinating.
the executive summary.
Yeah, read the executive summary.
That's right.
But
It's
go-
still long.
which is long, but
200 pages.
a couple things just to sum up for those of you who weren't there. We don't have to do everything here. There's some things we have to do,
Right.
and some things we have to plan for because we need to plan for them. And it's like John's saying, we're going to figure those out. Nantucket, seems like that's going to happen. Shimo, Monomoy, I don't know.
Monomoy, maybe, Shimo, unlikely.
But
My point, what I want to say about that is that if we don't build the sewers there, how can we preclude building sewers there? We need to do some
we need
positive
to
action.
do fertilizers.
Go ahead.
We need to do
Ban
fertilizers.
fertilizers.
Ah,
We need to do
no.
alternatives.
Something. We need to
But-
do something.
But you need, to, and we're, the
You,
board's
you,
trying to
at
get on this.
the meeting, you were going down the line, you're saying, well, 6% for this and 8% for that.
This
We
is-
need to,
Yeah, if you,
Go ahead.
if you
Tell-
go,
tell
if
them
you
about
go take
that.
out the CWMP and you look at this, that's what we have to do if we do sewer.
was that 180 million?
If you look,
233.
230.
that's for everything.
That includes.
If you look,
yeah.
if you go through the packet and you pull out a pie chart and you talk about nitrogen,
That's right.
this is, and it's not, but we'll take the town harbor, for example. This big section, you can't do anything about. This little section is fertilizers. This little section is sewers that you can do something about. This little section, 9%, is impervious surfaces. If you had less impervious surfaces, less runoff. And this one, 3% now or something, the stormwater. This is what you're trying to do, and you're trying to deal with it with these numbers here. You're dealing with 8% with trying to talk to their sewer. So financially, if we deal with fertilizers and storm runoff cost effectively, we can do a lot more good.
Yeah, and don't forget the jetties,
And the jetties.
And the and the
Yeah,
cranberry bog.
But
I'm with Tony.
But I'm not
100% of
saying.
It's all fake.
But I'm not
I
saying.
don't believe you can prove one bit of that. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be negative.
No, I'm not.
But if we like magically ban, let's just say we ban fertilizer for 2 years, just had an outright Vladimir Putin approach to this. Do you think there's going to be more scallops? Do you think there's going to be like suddenly some change? You're not going to notice it. I think we need to have more. We've got to get back. The jetty thing is going to happen.
The jetty thing's.
But when you were a little younger, I don't like to say. I won't say.
No, you can say. I'm young.
Well, you call me by my last name still, which is interesting. Is this whole cult? I had a talk with somebody really smart the other day about the culvert, the old idea about going on the Cod of the Bay. Like that we haven't talked about that in 10 years.
Yeah.
The water flushing through underneath the Cod of the Bay. It's never going to go through the hollow.
That must be a native thing.
Right. Under the Cod of the Bay. Under CO2. To the Cod of the Bay. You know what I'm trying to say.
But the thing is,
Those things have real facts instead of, well, if we get rid of the fertilizer over here, and if we hook up these, we're going to just magically change the water. It just isn't going to happen like
here's the
that.
thing, though, is when you look at all of our water, the harbor's in the best.
It's in great shape.
It's in great shape.
But yet you never
It's
hear
the
that.
ponds, and it's not Nantucket Harbor. It's Hither Creek. That's the problem.
Yeah, I want to fill it in, but when I said that
But Hither Creek
at
is
the
flushing
original
right
thing,
now.
everybody looked at me like they wanted to shoot me. Because
Fill in what?
I have a simple solution to this problem. They said, "What's that?" Fill in Hither Creek.
Anyways,
Wow.
I don't want to
That is
get
gonna
off
happen.
point, but I think it's useful when we're looking at this big
Yeah.
picture. We've been hesitant in our decision making because we don't know, or we have this feeling like we need to be more conservative. And I'm of the feeling, when you look at what the Cape's doing in comparison,
We're 100 years ahead of them.
it's just like you say, Matt.
Century.
We're in great
More,
shape.
actually.
And
Stay there.
if we look at what's good for our community, it's these capital investments to make, and the reason why I'm coming into the idea more and more that we should invest in our infrastructure, our schools, our town buildings, and whatnot, is because I think we need to focus a lot more on keeping people here working year-round, having, exporting goods and whatnot. Because this housing business of moving houses and selling it, the value there when we talk about having those tax rates being fixed, they're based on the value of a house that's not. I'm curious if it'll always be there.
Sustainable.
If
Yes,
it's
it will
sustainable
be.
in a long time.
It will be.
I'll bring something I've been working on because housing is the biggest need on Nantucket. The Community Foundation is trying to get at that issue. And there was an article in the Globe talking about. I'll bring the statistics and the comparison with then and now. The tax rate's actually gone down.
It is.
In 30 years, it's gone
Especially
way down.
adjusted for inflation.
But the problem is the assessments have gone way up. Not the problem, but that's the reason.
Right.
We're hauling in a lot of dough, but it's because the houses are worth 14, 15, 20, 30 million.
And don't forget the abatements. And I'm going to tell you something else, Toby. This kind of conversation, I'm glad you're engaged in this. I don't agree with you all the time, but I'm glad you're interested in
I'm
this.
thinking of.
No, you're doing all right.
Change.
We're starting to agree, which is kind of like crazy. I'm going to give you a call. Is the one thing that we can't talk about again, another one of these weird problems. Back to you guys again, right? We got rid of the II. We need more people hooked up to sewer. We think of the sewer system on Nantucket as cable TV or natural gas. And we all of a sudden, it's
That's
like,
another thing we can do.
what are we doing? We need people hooked up because we got rid of the water
Right, that's-
from Halbert Ave. That's what we're doing. Okay, my great-grandfather's sewer system's being replaced with a permanent pipe. Okay, so now, he was on the sewer commission in 1931. So now, we have to hook people up, but you can't tell people like, we need you hooked up because we got to pay more. But when you talk about spreading the sewer costs around to the non-sewer user people that are paying for everything, it actually helps diffuse it and make a better discussion. Then we get into this outfall pipe. When she talked about the sewer plant the last meeting I was at, I almost fainted when I heard that term because I'd forgotten that we're running out of sewer bed space. We're going to be talking about erosion out there. We're going to be talking about Sconset. If there ever is a breach out there in Sconset, what are we going to do with it? There's a lot of weird stuff that's going to start to pop up after we fix everything
Someone said there's a
internally.
treating out at that search site.
They're treating, but
A treating.
yeah, hopefully there is. Okay.
Thank goodness.
I'm there with you, but I think when the state really looks at it, they're going to say there's got to be in 5-10 years. It's like what John said. It's got to be different. There's got to be alternatives. There's going to be other systems.
You mean septic?
Septic,
On-site?
tight tanks.
Well, the tight tank Blackwater thing is going to eventually happen.
That's the other thing, all the things that we could do to preclude having to put more sewers in. We need to get the people hooked up that could be hooked up.
That's
The pipes
right.
going right by them. That
Yeah,
will help too.
that's right.
That will help
And
too.
I don't.
I think that's
I
happening.
can't shut you off, I just have a question.
Yeah.
At that presentation at the
Selectmen?
Selectmen the other night, I understood the consultant to say that they have applied for a zero-interest loan.
Brian, I think this is a question for you.
They have. There's certain projects that are eligible for 0% funding through the SRF fund,
Yep.
and they have applied, to my knowledge.
And it's been approved, I thought she said.
I haven't heard if it's been approved, so that might be something
Did I
that just
just
haven't gotten in
mishear
touch with me.
No,
yet.
no, she did say that. Was it for the Nantucket
I didn't catch that, so.
collection system?
I don't.
Or was it for the $9 million to upgrade, or not to upgrade it, but to make it what it ought to have been all along, the Surfside thing? But she did say.
There
that-
have been. I don't remember the parts off the top of my head that have been
Yeah,
approved because there's
yeah.
for certain projects you have certain limits with the amount of connections that are available to make it eligible. And I don't remember this off the top of my head, but I know that they have applied for 4 or 5 different projects for state revolving fund 0% money.
Well, just to kind of net it back to the
Yeah.
capital program committee, it sounds like Nantucket's got to be built into the plan.
But
45
Nantucket is
million.
just a pipe and pumping it. It's
Well,
not
it's a-
hooking it up. It's going to take years to get people hooked up out there. It's not going to just go poof and be
Well,
hooked
but in
up.
terms of capital planning.
Yeah, no, I understand, but I'm
it
just
didn't
saying.
It didn't seem like we need to plan for all the other areas if we do all this other stuff.
Yeah, and I want.
Which cuts the bill from what, 220 to 45?
Yeah, and the other issue, and I'm going to take issue with you on the fertilizer thing. I'm not
Okay.
saying, see, everybody wants to go from 100 to 0. No one's talking about going from 100 to 0.
use it as a
What we're saying is you
hypothetical
modify the stuff you're using, and you don't do it on a voluntary. It's crazy for us to be we're talking about spending millions of dollars to get the same effect that we could get in addition, roughly the same percentage, and I can argue with you the fact if you're dumping nitrogen in there, it's going somewhere, okay? So the point is, you could do that simply by developing a very controversial, but I think needed thing, and that is absolute control of what types of fertilizers and stuff we're putting in the ground. And that doesn't have to cost you millions of dollars. It'll cost you some aggravation, but that's what you got to stop worrying about aggravation. I mean, that's the problem.
Can I just say something about? and I
No.
don't want- No. Okay. You know why lawns are green? Can I tell you why the lawns are green? Because they overwater them. I'm in the people's yards. I can't even. You need hip boots in the summertime when it hasn't rained for a month.
And I agree.
You think I'm kidding?
No,
I know what I'm talking about,
My
John.
yard's a good example.
It's
I
the water.
fertilize once in the spring.
The water, the sprinkler systems are running when it's raining.
And I irrigate, and
more
my
revenue.
lawn's green. So,
But that's something that can be addressed.
you know?
I
You
know,
install
but-
the
We
system,
did all the things that we could address, man-made things that we could do to
Be
address.
careful what you
we
do
could
to
preclude all this.
aggravate the people that are paying the bills. That's all I'm gonna say. They are
That's
paying
enough
the
to,
bills.
can we adjourn? With that
I'm not sure.
exclamation point.
Not so sure.
Well, they certainly don't want to be Seward, I don't think. Probably, that
We're
would,
not talking about that.
did you want bottom oil, you should
You can get them to pay for some of it, though.
Pippin's Way.
I know about
They don't need to be 1 acre lots.
Nat, I know about
Too much of the numbers.
I do too.
it.
They're willing to pay for some of the sewer.
You're surprised you may not.
Well, when I was landscaping 500 years ago, we used
Cherry sheet for
Malagonite. You
fiscal
know what
15.
Malagonite is?
We're getting
Poop